Greetings everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all for tuning in. On this video, I thought it would be fun to kind of go through my history as a music fan and just kind of talk about how I got to where I am now. Those of you that have been watching my videos for some time, maybe this will give you a chance to kind of understand where I'm coming from a little bit better. Plus, I enjoy watching this stuff from other people too. I remember I know Pete Pardo did a similar video maybe a year or so ago. I've seen other similar type videos, and I think this is kind of interesting. I assume that if you're here on my channel, this is probably the love of music is the one thing that we all have in common here. So I think it's fun to talk about and kind of see other people's different musical journeys. So this is a topic that I was thinking about just a couple of days ago. I was at work, kind of having a bit of a slow day. Basically didn't have much to do except for think of stuff like this and try to create busy work. You probably know the feeling. But yeah, so I thought I'd just kind of talk about this and see where this leads us. So as a young kid, I always remember being drawn to music without having a whole lot of outlets for it in a way. I had a lot of like the little kid music. I mean, being a 90s kid, it was cassette tapes back then. I had a lot of like Disney tapes and stuff like that. I have like random memories of just like different little kid tapes for here and there, and I just remember almost always listening to them. Christmas music was big for me. I mean, I don't know when I'm going to post this, but as of right now, we're about a week before Christmas, and growing up, I listened to Christmas music a lot. So I just, any kind of music I had to latch on to, I did. And coming from my particular family, my mom doesn't like music, and I'm not exaggerating. She doesn't like music. She doesn't listen to anything. How did I come from her? We may never know. My dad likes music. My dad likes a lot of music that I like. He's introduced me to a lot of bands that I'm sure I will talk about later in this video. But he's not a record collector or anything like that. My dad didn't have like a music collection when I was growing up. Aside from him being a truck driver, he had a handful of cassette tapes in his truck, but that he would take on the road with him. But other than that, he didn't have like a big collection for me to go through and steal or anything like that. I don't have any older siblings that were like into music before me or anything, so I was kind of a bit nomadic with like my music back in my first 10 or so years of life. As I was beginning to age out of like the kid stuff, around the age of like 9, 10, I was kind of looking for something different. So I just kind of turned to what was popular at the time, pop music, and some of it I kind of got into, some of it I didn't. None of it I think really spoke to me the way that maybe I would have hoped. But that wouldn't last long. I had a friend in 5th grade. His name was Derek. He was a big Kiss fan, and I remember in 5th grade when we were dressing up for like a Halloween parade in school, and he dressed up as Peter Criss that year. That's like my first Kiss memory of him. Him dressing up like Peter Criss, and then from that point on, he would wear his Kiss shirt like at least once a week. Like it became clear that like this kid liked this band. That was like his thing. And though we were friends in the 5th grade, we became better friends in 6th grade because as we moved from the smaller school into the bigger middle school, he and I were in the same class together. So we already knew each other. So that just kind of made us better friends. And it got me even more interested in his band. So not long into 6th grade, which would have been the year 2001, I got my first copy of a Kiss album, Destroyer, at Walmart, and instantly I was hooked. Um, from the moment Detroit Rock City faded in from that intro and the guitars, like it just, I I kind of knew that I found what I loved. King of the Nighttime World, loved that song, loved it then. It spoke to me instantly. It's still my favorite Kiss song. Um, and that began my journey into Kiss and their catalog. My second Kiss album was Killers, followed by Smashes, Thrashes, and Hits, and then I think it was Psycho Circus, and then from there I kind of lose track a little bit. I could probably sit and figure it out if I had more time, but I'm not going to do that right now. As I was beginning to really get into Kiss and fall in love with Kiss, my dad then gave me a tape from his truck, which was Aerosmith's Just Push Play, and he said, "Let me know what you listen to this, and let me know what you think of this." So I took the tape in, played it in my tape player. Instantly with Beyond Beautiful, I was hooked. I thought it was a really cool tune. Just Push Play, I recognized from the Dodge Ram commercials back in the day. Jaded, catchy as hell. It was a fun album. To this day, I love Just Push Play. But that got me into Aerosmith. So for the first half year or so as a rock music fan, Kiss and Aerosmith were my two bands. And I was really digging fast into the Kiss catalog, a little bit slower with Aerosmith, but I began working backwards through the Aerosmith catalog. After Just Push Play, I got the Big Ones compilation. Then eventually, I want to say my next one was it Permanent Vacation? I think it might have been Permanent Vacation. Might have been another compilation in there too. I'm not sure. I'd have to sit and figure that one out. But I slowly began to work through the Aerosmith catalog as well. Very similar story with the third band that I ever got into, which has gone on to become my favorite band of all time, and that is Bon Jovi. The following spring, I was riding with my dad in his truck down to Tennessee, and while we were on the drive, he pulls out the Crush cassette. Now we're in early 2002, so Crush was the new Bon Jovi album. Bounce hadn't come out yet, and my dad said, "Here, let's listen to this tape and tell me what you think of it." So he pops it in his tape player, and I'm instantly hit with that talk box right at the beginning of "It's My Life." Bow, bow, bum, 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 bum. And that hooked me in. It's My Life is such an anthemic, upbeat, catchy Bon Jovi song, and I loved it. And as the album progressed, I was liking almost everything. Say It Isn't So, Two Story Town, Just Older, Mystery Train. We get to Captain Crash and the Beauty Queen from Mars, and that was kind of where I knew that I loved this band and I needed more of them. So I kind of hijacked my dad's cassette until I got my own CD copy of Crush, and then I very quickly began to work through the Bon Jovi collection. I got Crossroads and One Wild Night Live. After that, I got Bounce when it was new. And then I started going through the back catalog: Slippery When Wet, New Jersey, the first album, 7800 Degrees, Keep the Faith, These Days, etc. And since then, have kept up with every album as it's been released. The fourth band that I need to talk about early on was Van Halen. So early 2002, I'm introduced to Bon Jovi. Love it. I kind of, at that point, almost finished collecting the Kiss albums. I still had a handful to go, but I had a lot at that point. Still working through the Aerosmith. Now I got Bon Jovi to start working on. And then toward the end of 2002, around, I want to say September-ish, my buddy who introduced me to Kiss, he moved away a couple hours. So he lived with his mom, which was in the same small town that I lived in. And then he moved about 2.5 hours south to live with his dad. So every now and then I would get to hang out with him whenever he would come up to spend the weekend at his mom's or whatever, which wasn't that often, once every couple months. But he was up for a weekend, and for some reason, I don't remember why, but for some reason he put in the Van Halen 1 cassette. And he is still die-hard Kiss fan at this point. I think I still consider Kiss my favorite band at this point as well, though I think Bon Jovi was like hot on their heels. But for some reason, I don't remember what, but he put on Van Halen, and I don't think it was. It may have been to introduce me to him, but I don't think it was. But he puts it on, and I just remember really digging Running with the Devil. Eruption was mind-blowing. The Kinks cover was awesome. Ain't Talking About Love. I'm the One. That one, I think, really, like, whoa, what a tune. And I don't remember, I specifically remember not finishing the second half of it. We listened to the first half, and for some reason, we didn't listen to the second. So that kind of sat with me for a couple months until I was able to pick up my own copy of Van Halen 1. And I remember it like it was yesterday. My dad and I were Christmas shopping, actually. We were at the mall, and I picked up a copy of Van Halen 1 for myself, and we were listening to it on the way home, and my dad was telling me all about this band, Van Halen. And he's telling me that, you know, they had another singer after David Lee Roth left named Sammy Hagar. They had a bunch of hits with him, and we were just talking about Van Halen the whole way home and getting me kind of really interested because I'm also loving what I'm hearing here. And flip it to the B-side, and you get like Atomic Punk, and you got Feel So Good, or not Feel So Good. That song's not that good. It's Feel Your Love Tonight, Little Dreamer, Ice Cream Man, On Fire. You know, just a killer album, and that kind of got the wheels turning with Van Halen for me for a little bit. The next year, in 2003. I picked up a copy of 5150 at some point and a copy of a Greatest Hits at some point. And 5150 to me, it was okay. I didn't fall in love with it. I wanted to get it because I wanted to hear what they sounded like with the different singer. Yeah, there were songs I liked. The hits, most of the hits. Why Can't This Be Love? Dreams. But then there were songs I just wasn't that into, like Summer Nights. And then the Greatest Hits. I loved everything that Roth sang, and then I liked a lot of the other stuff that Sammy sang too. So then comes early March 2003, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. It was a Sunday, and my mom was getting ready to run over town to go to Walmart. The closest Walmart to us is about 25 minutes away. And I asked her if she would pick me up a CD, not expecting her to say yes, but she said yes. And she asked me what I wanted. So I showed her the Van Halen CDs I had. I said, I want Van Halen. These are what I have. Anything else. I don't care what. I said that, but in my mind, I was thinking, I was really looking forward to like 1984. I was really hoping for like Van Halen 2. Diver Down was like really intriguing to me for some reason. Even if it was Sammy Hagar, I was thinking Unlawful Carnal Knowledge. Aside from maybe Van Halen 3, I think the farthest thing from my mind was Fair Warning. But my mom comes home with Fair Warning. And for a minute, I'm like, oh, I was kind of, like, I didn't say this, but like I was kind of thinking like, I was kind of hoping it was like 1984 Van Halen 2 or whatever. But this is still a new Van Halen album. This is still really freaking exciting. So I pop it in my little CD player, and then Mean Street comes through the speakers, and like, if there was a moment that music ever actually changed my life, that might have been it. Wow. And to say that I was obsessed with Van Halen for the rest of the calendar year of 2003 might be a bit of an understatement. Like, Van Halen shot to the top of my list, and I spent all spring and summer just diving headfirst into their catalog, collecting all the CDs, the music videos, anything Van Halen, I ate it up. And I spent months just obsessing over this band. And for the first 2 years of a music fan, those were like the four foundational bands for me: Kiss, Aerosmith, Bon Jovi, Van Halen. Those are the four bands I was into my first 2 years as a music fan. In 2004, After Van Halen kind of came back down to earth a little bit for me, I around that time had kind of rediscovered my love for Bon Jovi. Like Van Halen pushed like everything else to the side. I was Van Halen was it for me. Um they come back down to earth a little bit for me. I kind of remember how much I love Bon Jovi and Aerosmith and some of these other bands too. And 2004 was the year that I actually started to discover a lot of bands kind of more at a faster pace, I guess. I was starting to move into like more of the, well, as like Bon Jovi and Van Halen might allude to, more like the 80s hard rock, hair metal kind of a thing. My big band in 2004 was Twisted Sister. I discovered them by watching VH1, actually, a show that Dee Snider was hosting too, and kind of really liked We're Not Gonna Take It. Eventually got Stay Hungry and loved it. That led to me getting Under the Blade and just falling in love with Twisted Sister, Can't Stop Rock and Roll. And Twisted Sister became my obsession in 2004, and they were my favorite band for a good year and a half, and it wasn't even close. I mean, as much as obsessed as I got with Van Halen, I think Twisted Sister even outdid it. But even during that, I started getting into bands like Guns N' Roses and Rat and Metallica and Def Leppard. How many other bands kind of in that '04 era? A little bit Poison. My buddy was getting into Poison. I kind of like them. I didn't get into them as much as like Rat and them. But I was going head first into stuff. I picked up like some compilations at the time. They had like a bunch of 80s hair metal hits and stuff, and got exposed to stuff that way. Kind of more the same in 2005. Bands more like AC/DC. I hated AC/DC at first, but I come around on them and really started to dig into their collection like in '05. Skid Row was one of my big ones in '05. Cinderella, bands like that. And then there were some bands that I kind of begun to dig into, but I never quite fully got into their catalog. Dokken was one of them. Dio was one of them. Probably a handful of others. Those are the first two that come to my mind, because around the middle of the summer of 2005, kind of into '06, I started kind of moving away from like the hair metal thing, and I was beginning to get exposed to like more modern rock, early 2000s, but like 90s to early 2000s kind of stuff. And the bands that kind of led the way there for me were Breaking Benjamin, which I was introduced to through my dad. My dad's friend lent him a copy of We're Not Alone. My dad then lent it to me. I put it on my computer, really liked it. And Foo Fighters. There was a Foo Fighters song on a Madden soundtrack I had back in, and I loved it. And I specifically remember going into the settings and turning off every song except for that Foo Fighters song and a Faith No More song. Those are the only two, so that when I was playing Madden, those two songs would just loop over and over. Good times, man, I tell you what. But my buddy got me for Christmas that year, actually, Foo Fighters In Your Honor, which had No Way Back on it, which was that song that I really loved from the Madden soundtrack. And I liked a lot of the stuff on that album. Not everything, but enough that made me kind of want to pick up more Foo Fighters. Then I got Color in the Shape. Nothing Left to Lose. And the Foo Fighters kind of opened me up to that sort of post-grunge, alternative rock, 90s kind of world. That led to Goo Goo Dolls, which I love the Goo Goo Dolls. Couple years later, like Collective Soul, Toad the Wet Sprocket, bands like this would just kind of start coming in for me over the next couple of years. And of course, as we get into like the later 2000s, 2006, maybe '06, like '07 for sure, you kind of get into like the old LimeWire days, which you could go on, and that was kind of the beginning of my exposure to like the file sharing and stuff like that. I mean, up to that point, it was still like I had to buy the CD if I wanted to hear the music. And at that point, stuff was starting to be on the internet. Stuff was starting to be on YouTube. I was introduced to Goo Goo Dolls through YouTube, through a completely unrelated video. I was looking up Star Trek videos of all things, and they had the Goo Goo Dolls cover of the Supertramp song that was on the song for one of those videos, and I just fell in love with it, and that eventually led to me getting into the Goo Goo Dolls. But Goo Goo Dolls, then Gin Blossoms, Toad the Wet Sprocket, like I said, Collective Soul was in that era too. So throughout the late 2000s, early 2010s, the post-grunge 90s thing kind of took over for me. And at this point, as I'm graduating high school, kind of getting out into the workforce, and I start working a job where we listen to the local rock station. So I start getting exposed to a lot of other stuff that I hadn't quite gotten to in my hair metal days. And stuff like Winger. Winger was a band that I was kind of interested in getting into back then, but I never got around to it. And of course, like Dokken, I did have a Dokken album, Under Lock and Key, plus a compilation album, but that was it. So like other Dokken stuff I would hear on the radio, Kicks, I don't know, I'm just drawing blanks, man. Other stuff like that I would get, because this radio station really was heavy on like the 70s and 80s rock. So I got exposed to a lot of stuff that way. Though my own personal time, I was still kind of more prone to 90s music and 90s alternative rock, post-grunge, that kind of thing. So I had a short stint too where I was into like Christian music. Third Day, in my opinion, probably the best band from that CCM scene. Lost a lot of touch with a lot of it since then, but Third Day is still a band that I do enjoy. But around the mid 2010s, now I'm kind of solidly out on my own. Got bills to pay, you know how it goes. And it's just, and the music is on YouTube. It's on, I don't know if Spotify was around yet, but it's on the internet. You can find it out there. So buying CDs didn't feel like it was nearly as important, and I thought that it would be sort of thrifty for me to not buy as many CDs. So I started tapering down the amount of CDs that I was buying. And this was kind of the beginning of almost like a bit of a dark age for me in a way, because I had a good 5 or so years, maybe from about 2014, I purged out my CD collection. CDs that I didn't really listen to anymore, I got rid of. And so probably from about then through the latter 2010s into the early 2020s, I didn't really buy a lot of CDs, except for maybe like new releases of bands I loved. But me going out and buying CDs wasn't something I did a lot of anymore. And it slowly started to kill my love for the music, I guess. I felt like I was discovering bands at a far less rapid pace. Listening to music on the internet was not as exciting to me. So I kind of felt a little bit stale and stagnant in a way. I still loved the stuff that I loved. I just felt like I wasn't finding newer stuff that I loved. I was finding newer stuff that I liked, but nothing that was like just blowing my mind. And it was kind of, I don't know, it kind of killed the vibe for me a little bit. And I felt sort of stuck. So in 2021, we got a record player. First time I ever owned a vinyl record player. And I collected a couple of vinyls just to get started off. I had 2 that I had accumulated over the years that I just got from finding like in random places. Stay Hungry from Twisted Sister was one. Diver Down from Van Halen was another. And I had them just to kind of like decorate with them. But now I actually had something to play them on. And I picked out a couple of other albums that I really loved too, to kind of get a vinyl collection going. And as I started getting into that, and I started to collect CDs again, because as I started collecting vinyl and realizing this shit's pretty pricey, and CDs, you get a better bang for your buck, because at this point in time, CDs are much cheaper than vinyl, and they're still easier to store. You know, they don't take up as much space. A little more versatile. You know, if your car has a CD player, you can take them in your car, put them on your computer, listen to them on your computer CD player. It's a lot more versatile, the things you can do with CD. So, but my big thing is I just started collecting music again, and that really rejuvenated my love for music. And the pendulum has kind of swung back now to the more classic stuff, the classic rock, 80s, 80s heavy metal. I still love the 90s post-grunge stuff. I still have spurts where I really get into that. But the last 5 or so years for me has really been dominated with the 70s and 80s hard rock and classic metal stuff. And I've been rediscovering some of these bands, finishing getting into the Dokken catalog, Dio, um, diving into bands like Deep Purple, which I had a surface level knowledge of in the past. Rush, again, I had a surface level knowledge. I knew the hits, I knew who they were. I didn't know the deeper catalog, and now I'm getting the deeper catalog, and I'm finding the CDs and listening to them and loving them. Rainbow, another one. It's just kind of come back to the point now where like I can collect the physical copy of these CDs and just really get into it. And what I've learned from me personally is that streaming can be a nice tool. I like to have it so that I can listen to music while I'm at work or if I'm out somewhere. My car now does not have a CD player, so I have to hook my phone up to it and play it. Kind of a pain in the ass, but it is what it is. It's nice to have my music on the go. But if I want to sit down and really immerse myself with it, I got to have the CD. I got to have the CD. I got to pop it in my CD player, put my headphones on, and just soak it in. And man, nothing beats it. I like vinyl because, how do I want to put this? I've come to the point now where if I'm going to buy something, I'm probably going to buy it on CD first if I can. Because, like I said, it's a little more versatile, more cost effective. My CD player has headphones, my vinyl player does not. So when my son's asleep and the house is quiet, I can kind of put the CD on and not disturb anybody or anything. As opposed to like playing the vinyl, I would have to keep it quiet. So the CDs are easier, just all the way around. They're more versatile. Vinyl, for albums that I know that I love to get them on vinyl and just experience them in a new way, because it does. It's a different experience with all these albums. The very first vinyl that I ever played was my copy of Diver Down. And Diver Down, one of my favorite Van Halen albums, been listening to that album for decades at this point. And playing it for the first time on vinyl, it just was a new experience, and it was like just soaking in. I just remember sitting there listening to, I think Cathedral was on, and like Ed was switching the volume knob like he does in that, and it was great. And the most recent vinyl that I picked up from my collection is Alice in Chains' Dirt, and I was playing that earlier today, and just having that come through my speakers with Them Bones, just the way that it begins. It's amazing. Just it's a new experience. It's a new experience on the vinyl. So I love to get these albums that I already know I love on vinyl and just experience them in a new way. Because like I said, streaming for me, I listen to a lot of album streaming. I like to explore a lot of stuff. But many times, over and over, I found that a lot of times I can stream an album and I can even like it, but that album may not click with me until I actually get a physical copy, and I will just experience it in a brand new way, and it's just a completely different vibe. So that's kind of where I am today. I'm almost like a bit of a kid in a candy store whenever I find a good record store, because in a way I feel like I'm making up for lost time. Those years where I wasn't buying CDs and my music kind of stagnated a little bit on me. I kind of feel like I'm making up for lost time for those years. Also, when I purged my album collection back in 2014, I got rid of stuff that at the time I wasn't listening to anymore. And I didn't think that I was going to listen to it again because my musical taste was changing, and I was wrong because I've come back to a lot of that stuff. I purged out some albums that I sure wish I had. A lot of them I've got bought and back. Some of them I'm still kind of looking for. So yeah, I'm very very careful now when I purge out my CD collection. Um, if I have ever had like any kind of connection to the CD, I tend to want to keep it now. If I buy a CD and it's just a complete dud for me right off the bat, then chances are eventually I may move on from it. I might give it another couple chances, but if it's one that just never hooks with me, then I'll probably just move on from it. But if I ever have a connection with a CD, even if I feel like I'm moved on from it, I'm probably not going to get rid of it now. So that's kind of where I am as a music fan. That's how I got here. So let me know in the comments any thoughts you have, any similar experiences to mine that you may have had, or anything that you may have done differently, anything you feel like sharing. I love reading the comments from you guys because you know, this is what's what we all have in common. We're all music lovers, and I kind of I do these because I want to meet more people that have this similar interest as me. So like and subscribe if you're into this kind of thing. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll catch you next time.